Hey friends, welcome to the Radical Radiance Podcast. I am your host, Rebecca George, and I'm so glad to have you here today in this space where we blend what we love with the Jesus who makes us shine. And today we have the most fun conversation with somebody that I think you're going to love. We have Curtis Chapman's wife, Mary Beth Chapman, on to talk all about their adoption journey and the work that they do now with their organization, Show Hope. I just think this conversation is really going to encourage you, hopefully as much as it did me, and I can't wait to introduce you to Mary Beth. But before I do, I want to tell you about one of our sponsors of the show, the Shine Bright Journal. The Shine Bright Journal is a free downloadable resource. It's a 100-page journal that you can go grab today at radicalradiance.live that will walk you through a lot of the things that we talk about around here. What does it look like for us to radiate the heart of Jesus in all that we do? So I'd love for you to go grab it at radicalradiance.live and help me welcome our new friend, Mary Beth Chapman, to the show. Mary Beth, I am so thrilled to have you today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
I know. So we've already established that you have some kiddos at Alabama, and I'm a Vols fan. So we've already talked football a little bit, which is so fun. A little bit, yeah. And so I loved hearing about that, and I'm so excited to talk more about your all's story today. So for our friends who may have not already made the connection, you are Curtis Chapman's wife.
Yes.
You guys are doing some incredible work in the area of adoption that I'm so excited to talk about today. This is something I don't know that we've really ever covered on the show, and so you guys are just the sweetest family to come in and kind of have this conversation. And so to start us off, I would love for our listeners who might not know your backstory with adoption, I would love to hear a little bit of your heart and kind of where your all's lives intersected with adoption.
Yeah, sure. So it's going to date me a little bit. Back in 1997, my daughter Emily and I took a trip to Haiti with our church. We went with Compassion International, and that trip was super impactful in a number of ways. In particularly, our oldest daughter at the time, Emily, came back with just this passion and this burning desire in her heart to pray for her family to consider what it would look like to adopt. And so she began to just pray. She wrote her dad and I letters. I mean, you name it, she did it. And she just said, "We have room at our table. I really want us to consider adoption." And we had walked with some other families that had been going through the process of adopting. Long story short, in 2000, we began to pray, and we began to say, we don't want to we used to go, "That's a really great idea for you. And when you grow up, you can consider that for your family." But we actually really took it serious to pray and to just really begin to take steps of faith. In the year 2000, that wound us up in the hallway of a hotel in China, receiving our first of three beautiful daughters from the country of China. Hannah was placed into my arms. And really, it was at that point that I just really understood deeply my own spiritual adoption story. You know, it was like Jesus was giving me this beautiful picture of what he had done for me. And so really, by the time we got home with Shoei in the spring of 2000, Steve and I really began to talk about, you have a platform, and what would it look like at the time in 2000? Just what would it look like to help begin to break down the financial barrier to adoption?
Yes.
And so Show Hope really was birthed there in our hearts and officially became an organization in 2003 with the mission to care for orphans by engaging the church. And the first way in which we did that was the financial barrier, which was we began to give adoption aid grants. And so that was really the start of our adoption journey. It was the start of Show Hope's, journey into becoming an official organization. And then that also led us to the adoption of our second daughter, Stevie Joy. In 2003, she came home. And in 2004, our youngest, Maria Sue, came home. So that's really in a nutshell kind of how we stepped into the adoption journey for our family, and then beginning years of Show Hope.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So I want to go all the way back to the compassion trip. So you went to Haiti. So my husband and I, we've been married about 2.5 years. We do not have children yet. And probably about a year ago, our church had partnered with Compassion several times in the past. My husband's a pastor, and we had done some compassion days, and we're super passionate about their mission. And there was a moment last year, and it was during Secret Church that David Platt does at his church, where he does, a
Okay.
teaching like late into the night, and it sort of simulates what goes on in the underground church. And he was doing this teaching about the Great Commission, and he said something that I'll never forget. He said, as disciples of Jesus, like, we are either a goer or a sender. So if we're not called, to the foreign mission field to the ends of the earth, like, that doesn't mean that God's not going to call us to partner with other organizations or partner with in different areas to send people. And so
Right.
just this idea of we're either a goer or a sender. And around that time, we did another Compassion Day at our church. And so my husband and I began sponsoring our child. And that has been just such a special experience for us. And we have loved that. So I'm curious, did you get to meet a child that you were sponsoring, or like, how did that come about for y'all?
Yeah. So, my husband, has partnered with Compassion International over the years
Yeah.
as well. Love the work that Compassion does. We have had Compassion children off and on our entire married life. But
Yeah.
back in 1997, our Compassion children were in India. So that was kind of
Okay.
outside the bounds of where we could really go at that point and
Yeah.
meet. So, but we wanted to see the work. And so being in this hemisphere, it was quote unquote easy as far as flight wise, an easy trip
Yeah.
for me to take an 11-year-old. I was actually part of a group from our church. It was the middle school youth group girls. So we took about 11 girls and
Fun.
we joined up with another group that were also there to see the work of Compassion. And so we did get to meet a ton of Compassion children. They weren't our
That's awesome. Yeah.
particularly sponsored children, but I would have loved to have, I still remember his name. I would have loved to
Yeah.
have met our child at the time that was in India. But yeah, it was obviously an incredible impacting story. When you
Yeah.
see the need in Haiti today is every bit as much present as it was back
Yeah.
in 1997.
Yeah.
Really caused a deep, deep desire for our very special 11-year-old Emily to take that on. I mean, we had our pastor come over and talk to her, when she was like, Mom, Dad, you
Yeah.
might be living in disobedience to God's will for your life if you don't consider adoption. I'm like, okay, this is an 11-year-old. So it's like, this is like, okay. I didn't want to do anything that would just, cause her faith to crumble. But at the same time, she's 11, right? How do you balance that
Yeah.
out? But yet, through children, some great stories have been spoken. And obviously, she's the one that really introduced this idea to us, and we began to pray. I always like to say, not everyone's called to adopt. It's clearly not everyone's
Yeah.
called to adopt, but everybody's called to do something. That's the idea that
Yep.
David Platt is saying. You're either a
Yep.
goer or a sender. We are part of a body, and all
Yeah.
the parts look different. So just really praying and asking God, what part am I called to play? And we ask, people a lot ask Show Hope, what can we do to help? And we have tons of resources on our website, but the first one is pray. Commit to pray.
Yeah.
If you can't do anything, commit to pray. And that is so critically important for the work that we do, because there are a lot of people stepping into this gloriously hard journey of adoption. And
Yeah.
the river is calm at times and it's rushing over their heads at time. And so if we can ask the body of believers around the globe to be praying for the work, for the families that do step into this work, and are more
Yep.
on the front lines, we cannot do this work without the prayers of the saints and many people to
Yeah.
be involved. So yeah, so much for everybody to do, right?
Hey, friends, quick break in this conversation to remind you of something. If you are loving the show, you're loving the conversations we're having, it would mean the absolute world to me if you would leave a rating and a written review on Apple Podcasts for Radical Radiance. When that happens, when more of those happen, the show gets put in front of more women. And in turn, it allows them the opportunity to take part in conversations that will show them more about what it looks like to radiate the heart of Jesus. And I can't think of anything better than that. So it would mean the world to me if you would take just 2 minutes of your time and leave a rating and a written review. I'd love to hear what you think. Now, let's get back to the conversation. Yeah, I know. Well, and as I'm thinking and hearing you tell your story of not only your own adoptions in your family, but also God leading you into this work of helping make that happen for other people, I'm thinking of all my people who listen, who maybe God has them in a similar season of opening their eyes to a need in the world. And they're in this sort of moment of saying yes to God, right? Of maybe a new
Right.
adventure with him. And I'm curious, as God was calling you deeper into this work and making this a reality for other families, what challenges did you guys face? How did God meet you in those? Like, can you speak to that part of your journey a little bit?
Yeah. So when we got back with Shoei, Stephen and I began to have conversations on the plane. I had been so radically moved by receiving her and the hotel hallway there. Again, the overwashing of Jesus' story in my life, right? I was
Yeah.
watching it play out, my spiritual adoption. We were receiving Joey, and it's like I was just hearing Jesus say, "Hello, do you get this now?
Mm,
Do you understand your own journey?" I was so just radically moved and impacted that I told Steve, I said, "Hey, I believe that there are so many children who deserve to have a forever family, right? How
yeah.
can we begin to use your platform to really step into that?" And I think there's going to be people that we know in our close circle, as well as with you having a platform, a greater circle that might want to step into that. Back in 2000, it was really for Stephen and I, because we were at the beginning of the journey. We didn't know what we didn't know, but what we
Mm,
did see was this huge financial barrier. Adoption is expensive. It's still expensive. It's anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000, depending on the country you adopt from, whether that's here domestically or worldwide. All that to say is, when I got back, I was so moved by all the children that I saw that needed families, that my
yeah.
husband would say I began to just write checks to people. "Oh, money is all that is standing in your way.
Yeah.
Here, we'll help." And he says that I was writing checks faster than he was writing songs. Don't know if that is necessarily true. However, we did know, hey, you have a platform. How can we begin to formalize this? What if we could help 100 people step into adoption and help them lay down the financial barrier? I don't think anybody that's considering adoption should be afraid because of finances, because I know a ton of places that, are resources financially. And so
Yeah.
that was our dream, that humble dream at the beginning, just thinking that there was this huge financial barrier. And so what we began to see as we were able to help people through the support of so many of our beautiful donors that have come alongside of Show Hope and partnered, our staff working hard, just everybody kind of coming together, from 2003 when we formalized Show Hope all the way up through today, almost 8,000 adoption aid grants have been awarded. And,
Wow.
that's a representation of over $34 million. So when I say that God can cover
That is
expenses, can,
amazing.
right? What we have seen is we don't award the whole entire adoption aid grant amount. We don't cover the entire adoption, because what we love to see is a partnership in community and in your people that are
Yeah.
closest, right? So we really see that if we kind of put wind in their sails, be
Mm,
the wind beneath their wings and kind of cover a big chunk of it, then we see schools, organizations, churches, community groups, small groups,
yeah.
neighborhoods, whatever group of people you're walking with, come around these families and really support. And it is amazing. Again, to this day, I sit on the Adoption Aid Grant Committee and I read the stories. And every time it's some type of miracle that happens that allows these
Yeah.
families to complete the adoption process, as far as financially speaking. And
Yeah.
so that's just been an incredible place to see where God has relieved a big burden. Stephen and I
Yeah.
like to partner with families going deeper, not wider, so to say. And so
Yeah.
obviously, as we've journeyed into adoption, we've seen some of the other needs that have arisen and kind of branched out into other areas of partnering with families. But that is certainly where it all began, and where we really saw this movement of God in the early 2000s, where people were really stepping into this gloriously hard journey of adoption.
Yeah. Wow. And I'm even thinking, as you're talking about this idea of partnership, it reminded me of something that I used to try to do as often as I could when I lived in Knoxville. So I think sometimes we just don't see the opportunities that are around us to partner
Right.
with people and help be a part of their journey, whether it's adoption or something else. There was a coffee shop in Knoxville when I lived in Knoxville that was it was a nonprofit, and what they did was all of the funding that did not go towards their rent, paying their staff, those types of things went towards local adoptions. And
That's awesome.
they had this wall in their coffee shop, and it was like an exposed brick wall. And every time that they took on, a new family, the family got a brick of the shop. And so as you're standing in line ordering your $5 latte, you're looking up and seeing like, this is me being a part of partnering with
Yeah.
this organization to help these
Yeah.
families, right? And I think there's opportunities like that all around
Yeah.
us, right?
There's a coffee shop in Alabama, in Tuscaloosa, does the same thing. I don't know that they do
Really?
the brick thing, but they do.
Yeah,
All their profit, a part of their profit goes to help local families adopt. So
that's
it's
so
beautiful,
cool.
right?
Yeah, I know. I would just encourage our people to just keep your eyes open for those things, because they're all around us if we want to
Right.
see them and we want to partner with God in that. So I love that. So one of the things that I'd love to hear more about that interested me was the medical care grants that Show Hope
Yes.
provides. You've mentioned
Yes.
this, which as I was reading more about your work, I realized this was sort of like the first of their kind in the adoption space, right? And so for
Right.
people who are coming to this conversation totally clueless like me about the world of adoption, will you talk a little bit more about these grants and what that means for families?
Sure. So at Show Hope, we kind of address three key areas that we like to kind of break down barriers in. I spoke a lot about the financial barrier to
Yep.
adoption, right? The adoption aid grants. And then one of the areas that we work in is breaking down the medical barrier. And again, adoption is expensive. A lot of children who come home through the miracle of adoption have medical needs that far outweigh their medical coverage. The insurance only covers so much. Some children aren't covered. One of the beginning ways that we spent time at Show Hope breaking down the medical barrier was we had to work in China for 10 years caring for medically fragile orphans and supplying their medical needs. In this past about 2 years, we had to transition our work out of China and kind of move into other areas of medical care. And so we just finished our first year of awarding medical care grants. And what does that look like is any family who has adopted a child and has ongoing medical expense, you can apply for a medical care grant. We ask you, obviously, a series of questions, but if we can help you cover medical expenses, a lot of things are covered in that. You can go on our website and find out kind of all the ins and outs of that.
Sure.
But we've begun awarding medical care grants for people who need just help covering the, expenses for ongoing medical care, whether the very first grant that we ever gave was for a child who needed a device to help her see. She really needed this huge magnifying device so that she could begin to read, and just changed her life. It was outside the coverage of medical insurance, so they applied for a grant. We give medical grants. You can apply every 3 years up until the child is 18, so it's not just kind of a one and done medical care grant. We really long to partner well with families and deep with families. And so we just acknowledge that in 20 years of doing the work at Show Hope, we see some of the ongoing deep medical expenses that just lay outside the bounds of traditional insurances. And so I think we've awarded, I'm going to get myself in trouble because it keeps changing weekly, but I think we've awarded just over 30 medical care grants. And so we're really, really excited. This is a really new program. We're trying to get the word out. So I appreciate you asking me about it. If you think that, if you even go, I don't know if this would be covered, I don't know, please go apply, because we would love to be able to partner with you if you've adopted a child and are needing some medical care covered. So yeah, it's really, really exciting.
That's amazing. I love that. So one of the other things I wanted to talk about is you guys are hosting an event this spring. It's called the Hope for the Journey Conference that will further support current and potential adoptive families. I would love for you to tell us a little bit about the event. How can people get involved? All of those things.
Yeah. So our Hope for the Journey Conference, it was formerly, some people that are listening probably will know that it was formerly called the Empowered to Connect Conference. Last year, we rebranded it as Hope for the Journey Conference. We still work closely with Empowered to Connect, but it is really seeks to encourage and better equip parents and caregivers to meet everyday needs of children impacted by adoption and foster care. We know that these kiddos and children, no matter how young, come to us with these little invisible suitcases. We all have baggage, right? But Stephen and I, we didn't know what we didn't know. And back in the beginning of all of this adoption journey for us, we thought love was enough. And we realized that pretty quickly love wasn't enough, that some of these children have suffered, early childhood traumas and attachment, obviously just being not with the birth parent that they were taken from. We really began, again, another way to journey with parents is offering resources. We work closely with TCU, Texas Christian University, formerly Texas Christian University, and the journey includes 5 high-level learning modules based on the foundational principles of TBRI, which is trust-based relational intervention, which we at Show Hope believe layers very closely with the gospel. And so it is just a beautiful picture of, I think, really how God intended for parenting to be, especially with children from hard places. So I encourage, we've been able in our pre and post adoption work, we've been able to send counselors and professionals to TBRI training. And then as we do this conference, we invite families, people who are considering adoption, people who have just completed adoption, people who are on the journey, churches, caregivers that are in close contact or partnering with families that have children from hard places. And it's just a beautiful conference to really help put tools in your tool belt to help parent these and guide these children in a way in which helps them heal. If they were wounded in relationship, there is healing in relationship. So how can we look at those key principles and help these children heal? So it's really an amazing conference.
Awesome. I love that. Well, before we go, there's just something I keep thinking about as we're talking, and I'm curious how you would encourage our people. You guys have said so many yeses to God in these areas where maybe you've seen a need and you've seen an opportunity to step in, whether it's through platform or all the things, and really make a difference for the kingdom. And for my people who are listening and they're right in the midst of saying that yes or seeing that need, what would you encourage them to do, or how would you just want to encourage them, period, if they're kind of in that space, right? Like there's so many points in your all story where that very thing happened. So how would you want to encourage them in that?
Well, we get that question a lot. So the first thing I'm going to say is, and I forgot to say this earlier, is anybody that's considering maybe stepping into the journey of adoption or the journey of just even getting involved, we created a resource because of that very question. It's called howtoadopt.org. That is a website that is hosted by Show Hope, and just about any question you might have is very beautifully answered on that website. I send people there all the time as a resource to go, hey, I'm thinking about this, or I'm thinking about that. It has just all been redone in the last year and a half, really easy to navigate. So that resource has been amazingly well received, and the staff at Show Hope has worked really hard at really having that as a premier resource for people who are considering any part of the adoption journey. The next thing I would say is, God doesn't sit in the sky and go, well, you should do this and you should consider saying yes and you need to say yes, because you know what? It's an invitation. It's an invitation to be invited. It's like, you know what? If you feel, I think God is gentle enough with us to go, you know what? If you feel like this is laid on your heart, I got an invitation for you. It might be kind of crazy, might be kind of hard at times, but if you'll trust me, I'm going to take you on an amazing journey. And, we told our kids early on that we were going to go on a journey of adoption, and God might put a detour sign up. I just think willingness to explore, willingness to ask God, what do you have for me? Just don't be, fearful. And again, it's not you should. It's just an invitation to step into that, and sometimes that answer is no, and that's okay. God's got something, and God has something for everybody to do. It might not be that, and you certainly don't need to beat yourself up about if you hear the answer no. That is okay. For Stephen and I, it seemed like we did. It seemed like we really did say yes, 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 yes. And it's like, man, that was a lot of yeses. But we feel like now we're in a place of life where it's like, okay, God has taken this work again. So many people have been sent to us to help us steward the work well. That little 11-year-old that went on that trip to Haiti with me is now the
Uh-huh.
35-year-old executive director of Show Hope. And so God kind of
That's so
completed that
awesome.
loop. We would have never really even expected that. But the staff at Show Hope, the donors that have come to us, the people who have partnered with us, the organizations that we partner with, just stellar organizations, stellar people. And so there's a place for everybody, right? And just,
Yep.
I would just encourage people to ask what God has for them, and then just be prepared, because it can be a gloriously hard but gloriously beautiful journey.
Yeah.
Who knows where you'll end up, right? But just trust the process and trust
Yeah.
that still small voice, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's so good. So the last question I always ask everybody on the show is one of my favorites, and it goes back to kind of my heart for the show. Our show's called Radical Radiance, with a heart to just really walk alongside women in having conversations around what does it look like to radiate the heart of Jesus in our life, our work, our relationships, our families. And so the question I love asking, Mary Beth, is what about Jesus makes you radiant?
Okay. Well, obviously, without Jesus, I would not be radiant. Oh, I'm a sinner saved by grace, right? I think that, again, going back to the last answer, I think that he is gentle. I think that one thing
Yeah.
that I'm learning in this season of empty nesting, I just sent my baby girl off to
Wow.
University of
Yeah.
Alabama Roll Tide, but,
Time that's
adjustment.
been said on this show.
Get it in there, right?
You
Okay,
did.
come on. She's a co-ed cheerleader. I wouldn't have said it had she just been kind of,
No,
just
it's
a
fine.
normal student. But Shoei's there too, so it's a double roll tide. But I trust me, I would have never thought I would have been saying it. So it's just an amazing. That's just kind of an amazing. Put one foot in front of the other, and look where we
That's
ended up.
right.
But I think what I'm understanding of the heart of Jesus in this season of emptiness is that he really is gentle towards us, and he really
Yeah.
is. It's okay to kind of just sit in that presence, to sit and just really ponder what it's like to be still and quiet in
Mm,
a world where everybody is screaming their opinion and their ideas. And it's been really good for me to be reminded that I've been rush, right? There's been a lot
yeah.
of, and it's good. It's good work, but does that necessarily mean I need to be that busy, right? And so God, I think what radiates, hopefully what will even begin to radiate more through me, is just the understanding that, I am enough even if I just sit here and be quiet and still. And
Mm,
so I think that would be what I would say today.
so good. So good. All right. Well, I want you to share, where can people access information about Show Hope, all the things that you want to share about how might they
All
connect
right.
with you guys after
Yep,
this?
yep. So showhope.org is the main resource for Show Hope. It's super easy to navigate. So it has all the things on there about the conference, about medical care grants, about adoption aid grants. So if you're seeking resources to apply or to sign up for the conference, that's all there. Again, howtoadopt.org is the
Yes.
premier resource for any question that you might have as you're thinking and pondering adoption, or you have a friend that's thinking and pondering adoption. Then obviously beyond that, my husband, StephenCurtisChapman.com, MaryBethChapman.com, we all kind of end up pointing each other to the same places.
Sure.
You can find us, search our name, we're out there somewhere. But showhope.org and howtoadopt.org would give you all the resources you need for what we talked about today.
Awesome. Good deal. Well, I just want to honor you guys for the work that you have done and all the yeses that you have said to God that have just led to God blessing so many families. And I'm just so excited to share this conversation. And I think it's going to encourage so many people. So thank you again for the work that you're doing. And thanks for being my guest today.
Well, you're welcome. And thank you for having me, Rebecca. I appreciate it so much.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. I just really enjoyed getting to know Mary Beth and hearing all about their story. I knew that adoption was a part of the Chapman family story, but I didn't know all of that. And I just hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I hope you go check out the work they're doing at Show Hope if God so leads you to get involved in that. And guys, I cannot wait to be back with you for our next conversation. We get to sit down with the beloved fiction writer, best-selling author, Francine Rivers, to talk all about redeeming love and the film that is coming out in a couple weeks. Gosh, I just can't wait. So join me here, same time, same place, and we will talk with Francine next time.